One of the basic composition rules in graphic design that you try to avoid isolation, so you don't want your objects or elements just to sit next to each other and have no interactions at all. Once you start overlapping your elements, you immediately start to add interest, depth, and more impact. A simple example is here with these two rectangles is to if I move this one slightly in front of each other, it immediately we start to have some kind of interaction and overlap, and immediately we have a little bit of more engagement. If I want to have a little bit even more interest, I could even mask out this tree and have it come slightly in front of the title. So that way I could move this further way down and maybe move the title here, and that way the tree would just slightly come over it without making it difficult to read the title. So overlap is very useful, but it is usually making things a little bit harder for us because once you start to overlap items, it starts to get difficult to select whatever you need, and also it is easy to accidentally move around that you are not intended to. And this is where you have to come back and talk about layers and also grouping them. So in this tutorial, we will be working with this adventure magazine example. So in this spread, I have prepared in such a way that it needs fixing. So when I go to the layers panel, if you don't have this, you can find it from the Windows menu, or you can use the shortcut F7 and when layers panels will appear. So we will find that we have the three layers. We have the table of contents text, the text layer, and the background layer. You mainly need to concern about these two layers, and I can show you that in this page or in this spread there is nothing on the text layer at the moment. Here, if I click on here, it shows nothing. If I click here, it has the components within the background layer. The only thing that appears and disappears when I turn on and off the text layer are the numbers, page numbers below here. Click here and there. You see that's what is inside the text layer. Because they are coming from the master page, I cannot actually access them here. So why it is good to have multiple layers? Well, first of all, it makes it easier to access always the items that you wish to interact with, especially once your page layouts are getting more complex. So one of the first things you need to remember is whenever you place an object in your page, it is going to have a position, normally in the X and the Y values. So not just a width and height, but also it has a depth, and we call it an arrangement. So it means you have close or far it is from us at the moment. Then I move the start block here, it's around on the top of everything else in the page apart from the master page elements. So if I want to move this behind the title, I would have to right click on it and go to arrange, and I have two options here, that is called send backward or send to back. Now these both have shortcuts, that is control and open square bracket and control shift open square bracket. If you want to move one step behind, then you can use send backward, or if you want to move it all the way to the back of the current layer, you should add just shift control open square bracket, and that will move it at the back end of the layer. So let's try this out using the shortcuts. I'll just select this, I'm holding control and open bracket, it goes one step behind. Now if I move around, it will definitely be overlapping this because it is still further from this layer. So if I try this again, control red, it goes further behind, and then I move it back, it's actually now behind the main image in the background. If I want to move it forward now, you can use the other shortcut, that is Control close square bracket. So also from the arrange options here, I'll just click here, select, right click, arrange options. Now I have two more options because I have moved it behind. You have two options, that is bring front and bring forward. I have bring forward, that shortcut is Control close square bracket, and bring to front shortcut is Control plus Shift plus close square bracket. So if I do to bring forward, just click here, or you can use the shortcut. It came forward one step, but it is behind this. So I'll just use the Control square bracket again. It will be here, and if I use Control square bracket again, it will come all the way to the top where it actually was. You can think of this as Z direction or axis if you are thinking in 3 dimensions, and this is represented really well in the layers panel. We're within the background layer now. We have this item on the top of everything, and if I drag it down all the way to the bottom, let's just say click and drag there, and it will be all the way at the back. So if I drag and put it below this adventure layer, it will be behind this adventure layer. The same way you can move items up and down within a layer, you can also use move them onto another layer. So if I want to have only background image in this layer and everything else on the text layer, then what I will need to do is to select all of these items and move them on the text layers. I'll just select all of this here, and I will move them on the text layer. Currently I had just undo this, I didn't select it right, so just adventure starts here, and this romantic Alps also. Click and drag, and it will move in within the text layer. To select multiple frames, you can shift click, or you can use control click on this little square, and the items will be selected with multiple selection. So don't click on the name of the elements, click on the little squares. Now I know that this is an image in the background, but I can see there is a text frame within this at the bottom. So I will come back to that in a second, but for now I have these 3 items selected. Another way I could do this, I can just bring it back here. I can do is go to edit, I can give a cut and go to the text here, and I can go to edit again and paste in place. I think I chose a wrong layer here. Alright, so all I can do is select all of these, holding Control Shift, and that I can give a just release this for now, undo. Okay, bring it back one step here. Okay, just select this, hold Shift and this. Now I'll go to edit and give a cut and go to this text layer, and I'll go to edit again and paste in place. We'll make sure that the position of these elements stays the same. So I'll make sure all of these items will be separated from the background image, and they won't really interfere with each other. So I can avoid having any of these text blocks ending up behind in my image. So using layers is a way of isolating your objects on your page, and also it makes it more convenient to access them. But what is text frame here at the bottom, I cannot actually see it. When I click on this little square, it shows something like this because the image is covering it up. So I'm going to use the shortcut, or maybe I'll just move it up a bit. In there I see that it immediately appears in front of the image, and I can see that now there is another block there, which is just a decoration. And once again, because this is a part of the text block, I would probably move this up into the text layer. But the same way you can move things up and down in the layers panel, you can just simply drag an object and put it in separate layer. And notice that whenever I move the items between the layers, their highlight color in the page also changes. This is the way InDesign is telling me that this is on another layer now. The text has a color red, while the background layer has the color blue. If I double click on the layer, and I can change its name, or I can change the color of the items that is highlighting. Each new layer you create will automatically get a new highlight color as well. And of course, all the layers you create and the colors are assigned to them will be consistent throughout the whole document. So you can decide not to have an object on a layer or on a certain spread, but the layer will still be there. If you delete a layer on the page, it will be deleted throughout the whole document. So let's see what is the advantage of isolating the image in the background and the text objects. Well, first of all, what I can do is I can lock the background layer by clicking on this icon here. Here. And I've immediately locked this layer. Just one single shortcut. You can also use Control L to lock the layer, and I've just selected this text, so it got locked here. So when you lock that, you immediately see a padlock option here. It means I won't be able to select that object. I can very easily make some selection of multiple items, like 2 blocks, and move them around. Or I can select these 2 blocks, I can move them around easily. So I can decide maybe that I actually want these items to be on the left hand side, and maybe I'll just unlock this and move this on the right hand side. Also, another thing you can do is group items together. So both these titles are made up of 2 elements, and actually story is made up of 2 elements as well. So it would make sense to group them together if I want them to move together most of the time. Shortcut to group them together is to select both of these, and you can use Control G, or you could just right click and use Control Group option here. Make sure you select both of them before grouping. I'll go ahead and use shortcut Control G. So when I press Control G, these 2 items are linked together, and I get a dashed line around them that represents a group. I can do the same with these 2 here layers here. Just select both of them, Control G. And I can also get this option from the object menu here. You have an ungroup option now because these 2 are grouped. Now ungrouping would be Shift Control G in case I want to ungroup them. Also notice that in the layers panel, when you group these 2 items, now we have 2 groups in the text layer. We can also rename this. I can also call this by double click and rename this as story. Well, this one is a story. Okay, let's double click here, story, and I'll rename this one as a title. Double click. Okay, title. And of course, if I open them up, I will see the individual items within them. So if I want to move starts here, the block, I can select it even though it is within the group. Let's say here I will be able to select this like that. And once it's selected from that little square in the layers panel, it will allow me to move around easily, even if it accidentally ends up far behind the frame, like so. Now this feature is called favored selection. As long as you have it selected, you can click and drag it out even when it's completely covered by another item, and that's a really cool feature. Let me leave this frame here for a second. I will actually ungroup, so I go to the object menu, or I can just right click and give ungroup. And let's say I have front text frame selected here, and if I want to get behind it without moving this current one, there's another useful shortcut that is called select behind. So let me just hold this here and hold control, click here, just put it behind this. Wait a minute, I'll just bring this to front, and okay, alright. So I want to select something that's behind this, so it's control click here, and there I can select something that's behind. I will immediately select whatever behind, and if I click again, it will come back again to the front object. If you have multiple items on top of each other, I could even go further, and that's just one step behind. For example, if I unlock my background layer, and if I use control shortcut, then it goes first to that element and then click again, and then it will go to the image behind. If I control click again, it goes back to the front object. So it goes in ascending order. So once I click again and I rescue the second text frame and bring it back here, it's just much better. And if I can shift click on these two items, I can just give group quickly. For locking these items, you should have a shortcut. So let's say I have now unlocked my background image. I want to lock it back again. So let's just click on it and give Control L, and it will be locked. Once it's locked, I can see in the layers panel, it is locked. Means I cannot select it anymore, but if in the normal view I will see a little padlock here, it just represents this item is locked. The same way, let's say if I select this group, let's say this group, and give Control L, it will be locked, and again I see the padlock. So if I want this to be freed up again, I don't even need to go to the layers panel. I can just click on here and it will be unlocked. Comes free again. So grouping and using layers are very crucial whenever you start working with more complex compositions and page layouts, because soon it gets too complicated to work without them. If you want to take a little bit time of organizing your elements into groups and layers, it will really pay off in a long run. Not to mention, if you need to work with others, you will be able to work with your files much better if you keep everything neat and organized and isolated into dedicated layers. You don't need to create dozens of layers. Sometimes one or two or three is sufficient, but it really depends on the complexity of the page layout. And we'll be taking a look at the magazine cover, which will have multiple layers. It will allow us to work with slightly more complex composition. Now, one of the ways to create interaction between text and frames, text and image frames, is to use the text wrap. And we'll be using text frames as well. So it doesn't have to be an image, text, but that's the most common way that this feature is used in page layout. I'll just open a document with that being said. Okay. Say I have this text frame. So if you have an image and you want it to be interacting with your text, instead of putting them next to each other and having them in isolation, you can decide to move it over text. Now if you're in a workbook, you can already try this out, and because I have this image and text wrap already applied on it, when I move this, you will start to see text will arrange itself around the image. So it is putting it away from itself. Now remember not to click at the center of the image. You will use the content grabber tool. Just click anywhere else and it will start moving the image around here. Don't use this one here. Just move this one. Use this the content grabber tool. Now, how do we set this up? Well, first of all, we have to find the panel from the Windows menu. You can open up this and this is text wrap. You can use the shortcut Ctrl-Alt-W. Here, I'll talk at this panel. It's an important panel in my panel section here. I'll be using this very often, so it's good to have this panel in my options. So this actually is the one that enables the text to wrap, and if I choose no text wrap, it will go back to normal. No text wrap will go back to normal. Now image is just simply on the top of the text, so then it's just a simple overlap and no interaction. Obviously it's not good to set up, but we cannot read the text. So we have to make sure that we use the feature, but I'm going to show you how to use it from the text wrap panel. So having the image selected, and that's not important. The text frame in this case is important. Having it selected, and I go to text wrap and choose I wrap around the bounding box. That way immediately it creates the interaction between the text frame and the text. Comes close to the image and it will be affected. So even if it's locked, and so if there's text frame here on the left which is locked, but if I move the image closer to the here, it immediately starts to move around. So it is going to affect everything, not just the frame behind it. Of course, the text frame can be prevented from moving around if you want to. Do that by default. They will always follow the changes and obey the text wrap from the other objects coming close to them. Although it is working out, but we really need to fix one thing, that is not to have text too close to the image, because it's again just uncomfortable to have text so close. It's putting text too close to the edge of the page, or having a stroke around the text frame too close to the text. These are all things you want to avoid. So to create a boundary between the image and the text frame, I can just increase the offset here. So hold shift and it will give increments in tenths. And there I have created a space and it looks much better. So even if I place the image at the center, it will look good now. Now if I have the image selected again, I can decide whether I want to wrap around the text or both of the edges, or I just want to keep it simply on the left side, for example. So I won't have to move it all the way to the right to be able to have the text align on the left. Or the same way, I want to keep it on the right side and I won't have to move it all the way onto the other side to be able to see that effect. Now there's an option called largest area, which will automatically recognize the space, which side has more space, and it will set the alignment accordingly. Now let's say I move it here. Now this one has more space, so the text wrap will align itself accordingly. So at the moment on the right side it has more space for text to flow, but once I reach to a point where the left side becomes wider, it automatically shifts to that side. So this is a feature you can set up the text wrap on the image. Now let's see what happens when you use a circular frame instead of a rectangular one. So I'll just go on and go to the frame tools. Here I have my ellipse frame tool. I'll just click and drag and make a frame here. Is that working or not? Alright. So I'm held shift to make it a perfect circle. Now press W. I can see my frame here. Now how do I fairly simply just double click on this, click on this. I can go to edit and cut, click on this frame, go to edit and paste into, or you can use the shortcut Control X and Control Alt V. Once I do that, the image is moved into my circle. I can just go ahead and delete this rectangular frame. Now I have the circle. And I have successfully transferred the image into this circular frame. What I need to do is make sure to look good. I select the fill frame proportionally option up here. Now the image fills in completely within the circle without being distorted. Now if I choose the same text wrap option, you can see it will detect the circular shape as if it is a square. Now in this case I need to use this third icon that is called text around the object shape. And it's going to take a while. We'll take analysis of the shape and then we'll come up with the alternative way of using this text wrap. Now this can recognize the object shape and wrap the text around the object. Similarly to before, we can go ahead and increase the offset. It's currently like 2 mm here. We have the contour options, which can be useful in certain cases, which we will come back in other examples. But for now, we'll just remember, if you use the text wrap in InDesign, automatically switches to the content and not the frame. Notice that the hand tool is visible when you have the brown outline. Remember, now you double click and switch back to the selecting the frame or the container. It's safe to move around and you can see how the effect works. So in a nutshell, that's what you need to know about text wrap. That's one last thing we would like to mention about the text wrap. It is the ignore text wrap option. So here, when I move this caption over the text image, it will disappear because image wrapping is currently on and it will make it impossible to read it. So as soon as I move it away, you can see the text is starting to appear. But once I move it back toward the image, it disappears again. So the way you can prevent the text to disappear is by going to text frame options. For that, you can right click on here and go to text frame options, or you can use the shortcut Control B click on this, and you have the option here called ignore text wrap. Click on this, and immediately you will see the text is starting to appear. Now this text frame won't be bothered by the image behind, so it can move anywhere and it is not going to disappear, while the image is still functioning with the text wrap and pushing all the text around it like so. And remember, if you want to make this the caption stays in the place wherever you want to, you can select these two options and group them. Just say click on this and use Ctrl G, and they will stay together. Means that next time whenever you select it, you can immediately move the item together, so you don't have to pay attention to caption moving together with the image. Now we'll be looking at the recognizing saved paths, or even detecting edges of the details within an image and create the text wraps outline based on that. It might sound very complicated, but it's a very simple workflow. Now I'm going to take it further and show you the more advanced methods with text wrap. Let's just go back to this, and I'll just move this like so. So I don't need this now. Say I have this image here. Which has a white background and a black foreground. Whenever you have something like this, without doing anything in Photoshop, you will be able to detect edges and use the silhouette as a shape for the text wrap. But if you want to use images like this, you will have to make sure you place it behind the text frame. Let's currently undo that step. Okay. So behind the text frame, arrange it and back. Okay. Now this is behind the text frame. Now if I activate the text wrap here, I'll be able to see the text because the white background of this image won't disappear. So it has to be behind the text for the technique to work. So once I have this behind the frame, I can choose the third icon here, and then remember, whenever you do this selection, it goes into the content. Just double click and make sure that the container is selected, and in case you want to keep moving it around, so there's nothing special so far. There's nothing special so far. Okay. And but the trick comes where I'm choosing here detect edges option. So it has detected the edges here, and now if I give a boundary here, it works like that. Undo. I'm gonna just move this. Just lock this for a while. Just give a lock on this. Click on this. Okay, and there it works properly. Detected the edges around the following the edges. And let me zoom closer. So if I see it better now, and if I move it around, you can see the changes happening immediately when I move this around. So this method doesn't really work when you have images like this, and it won't find the edges of the objects in there, but it works perfectly if you have a high contrast difference, and of course it works best if you have a white background and a black foreground object. But what you have here, you can make an image like this here. On a building, I have to make this like here. And you want the text around this object here. So in this case, yes, you have two options. One is to use the pen tool and draw the shape roughly around here. So remember, the shortcut for the pen tool is P, or you can just access it right here. Then you want to simply do is click a couple of times. And there you have your shape. You don't even have to draw the curves most of the times. It's enough, and you just add a couple of anchor points and finish it off. Drawing around the whole image like this and close it up. Now if I have this frame selected, select this one, select this frame, and give a text wrap around it in the shape, and you can just merge this up to both of these, and you can get that option right there. I just remove the text wrap from here. This one, it doesn't have any. Okay, just select this and remove the stroke from here. Okay, so there. Just give it W and take a look here if I'm perfectly in alignment. Okay, works good now. So I'll just select both of these, give quick move to here. I have two objects in here. Just remove one of these out for now, and then apply this. I was selecting the wrong object here. Okay, select both of these and then move it like so. And just try that again and give a little bit of border here. Okay, select these two, and this one doesn't have any text frame here right now. Just W, snap that again, select, and move it like so. Arrange, send to back. And there you can see your alignment happening there. Now this is already going to act as a boundary, and of course we did remove the stroke, so it is not visible. It's an invisible boundary, and now if I select the image and set it to no text wrap, and then send it to behind the text frame, we have exactly what we wanted. Now at this point, I would select these two objects together, and then I would like to move them up together as well. So I'll just go ahead and give Control G to group them, and this will bring this in the front of the image. I'll just make sure that they go to back side of the image, and yeah, there it works fine now. Alright, so you will have to arrange this back, and now if I edit the path here on the right side, it's necessary. There's too much of a gap, so editing something within the group is simple just by double clicking on it. Within the image now, just go ahead here, use W, okay, and here you can click on this object here. So ungroup this for now, and then go ahead and select this here. Okay. Use the direct selection tool, and you can click on this path, and you can increase or decrease this path length. Just click here, and you see that white arrow. And click here as well, and you can choose to increase or decrease the size gradually. You can also change the path from here as well. Just say you want something like this, and the text will wrap around the shape that you create using this direct selection tool. Make sure the shortcut is A to activate this tool, and I can select the anchor point, and moving it here and there will just do the job and will wrap around the text with respect to that path. If I want to edit the path, I can also do it from the layers panel. I can just click on here, and I have my path here at the bottom. Select the polygon, which is the path, and then use the direct selection tool, and I can also zoom it a little bit closer to make sure that anchor point is there. Or maybe I can even lock that, lock the image behind, and then work on that so it's not coming in hindrance while I'm editing the path. So this way we can set up a boundary within an image, and another way would be to save a path in Photoshop in an image file itself. Now I'll show you another technique which will be about the masking objects, how it can be used to combine with the text wrap. Now another thing you need to know is that if you have an image that is using the text wrap and then you apply the corner radius, say this one, okay, ungroup, and okay, so you have the image here and you're applying the corner radius. Click here and there. The wrap won't be considering that radius to wrap around it. It will be ignored, and text wrap will not follow it. So just to show you the image at this moment, I'm setting up a wrap around this bounding box, and as you can see, it doesn't work. Even if I actually follow that curve on the corner, when I start changing the bounding box, or I change it into graphic change, or change it to detect text, anything like this would not work at all. I just made something else up. Okay. So what I can do is actually a fast and easy solution for this. You have to go into the object menu, and under the paths you have open path option. Once you do that, it'll fix the problem, and once you can add a little bit of an offset, it starts to close. First of all, I need to select this bounding box here, one of the sides here. Okay, object, paths, open path. Now the text wrap works properly. We'll stick around with that corner radius. Now if you can go ahead and give this, it will move away from that. But now if I want to change the corner radius, it is not available anymore. Now it becomes permanent, so that it would be tricky to adjust it from this point on. So unless you are 100% sure that you have these corner radius, otherwise just to make best to save a backup, and then you can always come back in case you change your mind about the corner radius. So these were the additional methods to work with the text wrap. Now we'll be discussing about the masking that we use in Photoshop. You don't have to go access the Photoshop for now. It can be done in InDesign as well. I actually prepared all these examples ready for InDesign, so you can skip those parts whenever I explain in Photoshop. But because of these applications in the Creative Cloud, Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign are even previously in the Creative Suite so integrated, it's best to learn not only one single application isolated from the rest, but it's important to learn how they are combined and how they work together as a team. Now we'll be discussing masking. This is probably a best way of creating interaction between elements, mainly images. Go ahead, Control W. Now it is very easy to set this up. Of course, you have to find the right type of photograph which will work well. But once you start doing masking, it will open up a new level of making interactions and overlaps and engaging between elements in your composition. So I like to go to here, and I have prepared a Photoshop path here along with this image. I will show you how to set up a path, but this one is already saved with path, and we can access it by selecting this first and then go to the object menu and go to the paths. We have the clipping path option here. Go to options. You can use shortcut Control Shift OK. You can choose Photoshop path and make sure you have the preview on, and there it came out with a cutting, and give OK. Because there is only one path saved inside this image, it automatically selects that which I called with wind turbines and mountains. If I click OK, you will see that it already did the masking and we revealed another image in the background. So if I want to select the other image, I can do that by control clicking and selecting the image. Here I can move it around like so. So it's actually a beach scene from Vermont. Here. But if I move it back here, it will look like a sky behind the mountains in the Alps. So although Photoshop is a brilliant application to create this type of composition, you can also combine images by setting up a path in Photoshop and then do composites here in InDesign. Now, of course, you don't necessarily need to have the sky here. You can just crop it and then show. Control click, and you can delete that out. You can just crop it like so. And show less of that. We can use the image like this as well, which can be really cool. If we have like a background color, or which we even can add a type and sit on behind the mountains. So if I use the type tool, this is a shape, not a text. So if I choose the type tool and type in here Alps ALPS, I'll choose the font. That is, let's go here, font BEBAS. I have the font. Have this on, okay. BEBAS, okay. That's the font. I'll increase the size a bit. Double click and it will set up according to the text. I can send this arrange center back, and the text will sit like it is behind the mountains. So you immediately see we have this interesting effect. We can still see the text and it feels like it's sitting behind the mountains. All we can do is many other creative techniques using masks, and I mentioned I'm going to show you how it works. So I'm going to move this first side a bit. Let's click here, darken here. Okay, just group it and move this aside for a while. Just okay, and I'll use this image to do that. There's something we haven't used so far. The pasteboard next to the pages is an active area, which you can use to prepare things if you don't have enough space on your page. Or if you want to try variations, you can always put things on the right or to the left of the page, which can be called pasteboard. So it's a great way of preparing things or saving a backup of something and then only putting things onto your page that is ready. So now we have more space. I'm going to select this image and scale this using Control Shift, like so. Then I'll show you how to open the image within InDesign into Photoshop. All you have to do is right click on the image and you can edit with Photoshop. We don't have the option here, Photoshop. You can choose other here and just go to the Photoshop application. See, Photoshop. And this open. So it will now immediately open up the Photoshop window. Or you can use the shortcut Alt and double click on the image. It will do the exactly same thing. Now we will have this image opened up in the Photoshop. Now all we have to do is just wait for a while. It's loading. Okay, Control 0, and so we can use the pen tool to draw a path around the buildings in this case, and we can use a much faster method, that is the quick selection tool. So I only have to start building around these buildings. The quick selection tool, and then just make a quick selection by dragging here. Here I can just remove this middle, holding Alt and remove the selection. This portion as well. Okay. Now the path will be proper. Alright. Now to make sure the sky is selected, I will go to the select menu and go inverse. I'll go to the paths from the path panel, and at the bottom all I have to do is click on this icon and make work path from the selection. Once the path is saved, I just have to double click on the name of it, and I can call it maybe Beach Huts. And boat, and then save this image. I'm going to save this as a separate file. Save as, and save it as, say, photo 14 with path, with underscore path, and just give me underscore one more and go ahead and save. Yes, so I already had one, so I'm just gonna overwrite that. So once I save that, I can come back to InDesign here, and I can place that particular image. Just go ahead and place workbook, links, the one with the path, with the path open here, and got replaced. Now you can go to the same object menu, clipping path, choose options, and choose Photoshop path. And there I have my working path activated. Give OK. Let me just show you one last thing I'd love to do in Photoshop is, so once I have this masked out like this image, I can choose this image and give Alt click to copy this. I have a copy here now. And then I make sure I align it on top of each other. Okay. And select this and align this on each other. Now I'm going to go back to object and clipping path options, and I'm going to choose none for now, and leave OK. And what I can do is I can just click and drag, double click here, just click and drag, and so I'll just take this one back and go to range, send to back, right click and range, send to back. Okay, now I'll just move this. Bring proportionally. I'll just auto fit on and just make sure. Let's take this away for a sec, and here I'll just, okay, this works. Okay, that works fine. I'll just take this back to where I came from, and there. So that's the effect I wanted to create. It is an out of bounds effect. So if I press W, it will look even better with the buildings. Feel like they're coming from out of their frame. So why this is so much more effective than just simply masking the sky out? Because seeing the sky there mask, the whole thing look much more three-dimensional. Just to show you this, if I delete the sky, we will have only buildings. It looks like a selection, and it doesn't look much engaging here. Say I'll just delete this, make it out, delete this, and if I put this here, it just looks like a plain simple image and nothing appealing about it. But if I have a bit of a sky there, it looks much more engaging and impactful. So doing this type of an out of bound effects with the masking, or the example that I showed you, where we have the text behind an image, or simply replacing details of an image, can really improve your design and make compositions and page layout much more exciting. And you need a little bit of help from Photoshop, but majority of the work will still be doing in InDesign. And on the technical side note, you can save the paths into JPG file, so you don't need to do PSDs or TIFFs. Even a simple JPG file will do, and you can even have multiple paths saved into JPG. Now I recommend that working with JPGs, and it's always better to use TIFFs or PSDs, because each time you overwrite a JPEG, you're losing a quality on it, and it will show after a while. So it's safer and better to work with TIFFs or PSD files. It's good to know that even JPEGs support Photoshop paths. And if you like masking, then go on and practice this. Now, text warp is not the only method of combining images and frames together. There is another feature called anchored object or anchoring images. Essentially, just go back to a different page here, and what you can do is you can have this image or a graphic that is going to be connected to the word or a character in a text frame, and this link is called anchoring. So wherever the word moves, the anchor object will follow. I'll just show with a simple example. I have an image of mountains and I have word mountains in this image text frame. All you have to do is click and drag from the top right bottom. So that's this anchoring position, this blue dot. Click and drag and put it here. Now from here, after doing this, I can change the width of this, and you can see the image is following along the word. If you move this around, it also moves around. So if I press W, you will actually see the connection here between the there's a threading. If you don't have the text track open, you can turn it on from view, extras, and you have hide text threads option. You can use shortcut as well. The cool thing about the anchored object is that you can freely move the image around, and you can see it will still be able to follow the changes. Just say move the text around. It is following the text still. You can even combine the text wrap with anchoring. So if I move this image closer to the text wrap, below this word will work perfectly. Now I can show the moving frame. You can see the image is moving up and down. But as soon as I move the image further up, it starts to go above the anchored word. You'll find it difficult because it's slightly contradicting things. Once you start combining these different methods, you will be aware of the limitations. If you want to get rid of anchoring, you can go to the object menu, and under the anchored object, can give release, and that will release the we'll move on to the next page. Here I have this text frame. Once again, an image with a text frame, and I'm here to show you that slightly different way of image with text frame. Like to select the image, go to edit and go cut and go within the frame. Let's press W. Within this, double click here and click here. You can give shortcut Control V, or you can go to edit menu and give paste. You can see that this acts like a, I'll just increase this. Okay. Now image is placed in which you will see the image is actually now the part of the text string. So when I change the size of this frame, it actually moves up. It actually moves up and down, similarly to an anchor object, but for the inline images, behaves like a word or a character. And I can just click here, and it will select like a word, like so. Also, you can use the alignment option. You can give center align, left align, and even space before. Just give a space before or space after. So it's acting like text. cool thing is that I have two columns within the frame. If I use threading between multiple frames, let's say here, it will be able to move along within the columns like so. If you want the image to be positioned close to a certain part in the copy, and you have the copy, let's say in use format, inline images or anchor objects, you can help you keep those contents close to each other and returning back to the anchor objects. So I wanted to show you the thing that if you want to change the position with the anchor, you can click and drag the anchor icon and then just reposition it somewhere else. But if you want to be a little more precise, you can select the text frame and go edit, story editor. And here you have the anchor. You can select here and you can move it like so, particularly at a different position. And when you're ready, just press Ctrl Y and return back to your text frame. Or you can just give close here, right, like so. Right. That's another useful thing to remember if you start working with anchored objects. Now here is an example to create an engaging result. Now, so essentially I have 5 layers here. We have text layer with the text. We have all the graphics. And we have the actor layer. And we have the behind layer. This might look like a little confusing. Let me show you how this works. When I turn on the actor layer, it looks like nothing happens. There is only a shadow appears, if you notice, around these details. Let's click here and you can see the shadow. And if I turn it off, you can see the shadow going back. So if I unlock the actor layer, now I can select the object. I can move around. Select this object and move around like so. So if I turn on the normal view, you can see that it is the same image, but it's already a mask around it. And with the mask, the background is removed, and while the original still has its background, and so is this on the image layer. And to be able to create that effect, you will always see in the magazine covers, I have created another layer with the title, another layer with this title. So if I align these two characters properly, just remove this text for now, align these two properly, then I'm going to get exactly the effect that we needed, especially because I also added a drop shadow on the masked version of the actor, which is up here. So I can turn it off and on like so. Obviously the text is on top of him. Then we have the masked version of added again. It can cover up all the parts of the text. Let's see, there is a subtle dark background and we have an original image. And then after this, of course, it is just all additional elements, and I like to keep them on separate layers just to make sure that I can keep the actor and the background in place while I'm playing around with the rest of the text frames. So although I'm not showing a step-by-step procedure about the magazine, you know the trick. That is simply using masking and layers, you can get this kind of results. Just press W and gives result. Okay, we have We'll discuss a technique here with this next page. I have two things. I have an image in the background and this text frame on top of it. Now the font is Impact, and if you don't have it, you can download it. It should be available both for PC and Mac computers. So when I have this text frame selected, I want to do this convert to outlines. Right click and convert to. I can go to type menu here and choose create outlines. Use the shortcut shift control O as well, and becomes more like a frame. And you guessed right, now I will just select the image, use cut here and select this and go to edit menu and now paste into. So now we have the image inside the text. So after seeing all these examples, you will definitely find the masking feature amazing, and your page layouts can look so much better once you start using this technique. So after seeing all these cool examples, I hope you agree that masking is a brilliant feature. So make sure you practice these techniques from this chapter, and it's getting a little bit more complex as we move ahead, and you should not rush through all the videos without actually practicing. These lessons have been prepared after spending a lot of time, so I'm giving these lessons so that you can actually master everything, and feel free to be creative. So after repeating the things I showed you, you can start experimenting and try a different combination and using these techniques with your own images and so on and so forth. InDesign is your playground, so have fun when you're ready to move on. So next we'll be working with styles.